Hello guys, welcome to my humble YouTube channel where I bring you fanfiction that will brighten your days. Before we start, a subscribe is greatly appreciated, and don't forget to leave a like and ring the bell icon so you won't miss exciting new fanfiction stories. The Saint of War, Tensura x DxD, by Kischur. Chapter 18. When Luminous came to her senses once more, what she saw was that of an unknown white marbled ceiling itself, but unlike most that would panic at seeing such an unfamiliar sight, she didn't panic at all, but instead looked all around her in curiosity itself, feeling the need that looked around her. While looking, she then noticed something as well, with it being multiple holy symbols and sigils all being projected upon her, causing her to click her tongue in annoyance. So that's why I felt so weak right now. Luminous could only think in irritation itself at the situation that she was placed upon. It was only thanks to her fully awakened self as a true ancestor that she could even survive the holy symbols and sigils itself. If not for that, even as a vampire king, she would have been instantly turned into ash itself thanks to the holiness of this symbols and sigils that sealed her power away. However, but still, whoever came up with this sigils to seal me up clearly underestimated me. Luminous was furious at such clear disrespect to her power. The seal itself was created in such a way that it allowed her some freeway itself, in the manner in which her power works. Sure, even if the seal is perfectly made, she would still have some of her power, but the way that this seal worked, just her power as a true ancestor was sealed off, causing her to be locked in as a vampire king class vampire right now thanks to this seals. Just without some of their abilities itself, worthless. If only this sigils didn't have such purity of holy energy, I would have been able to destroy them regardless of my own power. Seriously, who created this anyway? She thought, before her mind raced back to before her mind went blank. Golden eyes that flashed even more beautiful and shiny than even the most polished gold itself, while having blue hair that looked like a flowing sapphire streams itself, with it being so imaginably beautiful and natural that it surpassed all mortal or divine vessels themselves. But above all, the thing that truly caught her eye, and the thing that caused her mind to always remember, was her face, having a divine beauty that surpassed all gods of beauty itself, with her even being sure that even gods of arts wouldn't be able to perfectly recreate such a masterpiece of a face. It was truly the most beautiful woman that she has ever seen. It's no wonder that Exorcist didn't want me. She must have desired that girl for herself, she thought, with her even happily nodding at such a fact as well. Well, considering her beauty, I very much understand her reason now. I forgive you. In fact, I even raise my evaluation of you right now, she thought, seeing the Exorcist that rejected her advancements without a second thought in a new light. But still, heavy panting that girl. I want her, she thought, lusting over said girl that cut her down to pieces. It was truly such a divine sight that even she was left speechless at such a divine beauty being presented to her in person. Boom. Asterisk. In a single instant, Luminous jumped out of her bed and into her feet, with her sense being flared up to the max itself, with her standing and looking over the one that attacked her and cancelled her fantasies over the woman that bested her, which has caused her to see a man looking towards her, with his arm being outreached to the bed that was now destroyed, with it being stabbed by a large sword. The man has a slim figure, average height. He has white hair, with brown eyes. Sometimes he has an in his eyes and on his gloves and clothes. He wears an blue-colored coat with orange, yellow and black with some white gloves. He also has red-colored skinny jeans with a brown belt and light brown boots. Luminous, seeing the man, could only let out a single smile towards him, not feeling threatened by the man at all, since after all, in terms of power she was still far higher than the man, and add in her own experience fighting powerhouse gods like Apollo and the likes, she is confident that she could win a fight against the man despite her own weakened state. Oh, and who might you be? She asked, curious on the one that was crazy enough to attack her. Since after all, as the queen of vampires, even powerful gods give her certain amount of respect and wouldn't outright attack her straight away, not in a war anyway. The man, hearing her question, only let down his hand and then elegantly bowed down to her, like the earlier attack didn't happen at all, especially with his ever calm smile on his face as well. Greetings, Queen of Nightmares. My name is Elios, Crusader rank Exorcist at your service. Hearing the man's name and the rank as well, she then readied herself for another fight as well. Crusader? The same rank as the woman that fought the Romanian vampires? She asked the man, since after all, in terms of modern information, she is surely lacking, with her sleeping for the past centuries, with it being needed to ascend past the vampire's existence and become a true ancestor. Ilios, hearing this, only looked at her before 10 holy swords instantly appeared before her and then flew towards her that surpassed sound itself, with Luminous being able to either dodge or deflect said weaponry away from her, with her grabbing a single one and throwing it back towards the Crusader, who only projected a bubble barrier around him, protecting himself, while also destroying the sword that was flung towards him. "Does that answer your question, Queen of Nightmares?" he asked her, who only narrowed her eyes at the Crusader. "That's right. Thanks for answering, Crusader," she spoke with a tense tone in her voice, since after all, what she just experienced was also proof of his power, something that the supernaturals looked highly on, especially her who didn't know the current happenings of the supernatural world thanks to her sleep. "But still, to attack me when I was on bed, was that really necessary?" she asked, while also walking around him, with Ilios only looking towards her, and despite his relaxed look, Ilios is 100% guarded, with Luminous not seeing any openings at all in his stance right now. "Oh, but of course, since after all, despite my lord's wish, you are still very much an enemy after all," he spoke, with some venom in his tone, causing Luminous instantly know what is going on, since after all, she has always heard that tone of voice from long ago, when she herself reigned the vampires as queen. "I see. So you have a vendetta against the vampires," she said with none of her earlier tone, with but a serious and blank tone instead, with her raising her power more, readying herself for a fight. With but silence engulfing the room itself, one moved from the other would set off the fight between the two. With the first one being too moved was Ilios. "Upas. I give up. My superior's orders is to just watched over you, Sue. I leave and I do apologized for attacking you, Queen of Nightmares." With that, the tension was then released, with Luminous too also lowering her power as well, back to a state of calmness, like there wasn't a battle preparation going on. "Let's start." "Fine." In an instant, Luminous coated her nails in pure aura and immediately slashed towards the Crusader, who upon seeing the aura slash running towards him, he immediately raised his hand with it shining for a bit before a bubble barrier appeared around him, blocking the attack. Ilios seeing this couldn't help but scoff. "This is the power of the Queen of Nightmares? I thought you're better than that." Raising his other hand, it shone once more before a single sword floated right in front of his outstretched hand, then flew towards Luminous at speeds that seemed uncountable due to its positioning, propelled with incredible force. Luminous, upon seeing this, could only muster a slight look of surprise. She then enhanced her left hand with her aura and swiftly backhanded the sword itself, deflecting it towards the wall. The blade pierced through the wall effortlessly, as if it were a hot knife slicing through butter. This demonstrated the dangerous sharpness of the blade to Luminous, who could only narrow her eyes at the Crusader standing before her. "I see. So I was right about you. You have the sacred gear. God's blades within you, Crusader," Luminous said with a hint of caution in her tone. After all, the sacred gear itself is one of the few things that could truly harm a true ancestor like herself, especially considering her power is sealed to match that of a mere vampire king class. God's blades. A sacred gear famous for its ability to create holy, divine swords, with them being all extremely powerful enough to even bring harm to ultimate class entities with little to no training at all, with its users being famous for being able to kill beings vastly superior to them. Of course, they too also held its own weakness, however, which is that each sword created is extremely fragile itself, with even low class being capable of destroying them when granted the chance of being able to hit them, with each sword being primarily focused on its cutting power rather than durability itself. And then add in that each sword is extremely tasing on the body and magical pool itself, it is no wonder that none truly see God's blades as a particularly powerful sacred gear itself, with most users being extremely powerful glass cannons that can be taken out by even low-class entities. With only few users being able to use said sacred gear at its theoretical full potential itself, but right now, however, Luminous felt that this user in front of her was different. As a being who has lived for hundreds of years, it's evident that she has encountered all sorts of enemies, and fought all sorts of sacred gear wielders, with them either being ordinary sacred gear users or Longinus class users, with this particular sacred gear being one of her most frequent opponents. But still, comparing the exorcist's swords to the other numerous wielders that she has fought, it would be like measuring the distance between the heavens and earth itself, since after all, unlike so many others, This one actually fixed one of the gear's worst weakness, and that was the fragility of each creation. Somehow and someway, he was able to figure out on how to fix said weakness. The church. They have become a force that cannot be underestimated any longer. That was her thoughts about the new church itself, with there being no comparison to other church eras, with this era being the obvious strongest if beings like Ilios and the exorcist that she needed to fight seriously, and the exorcist that defeated her without effort at all currently exist right now, in a single roof. Does the rest of the supernatural world don't know this? If they do know of this, why haven't they done anything yet? She couldn't help but question, since after all, from the pantheons and factions that surrounded the church, she would wonder if she was still in the same world with beings like Zeus as running pantheons and not actually trying to kill the ones that he perceived as a threat to his power, and that is the human that is heading the church itself. She was sure the ever so arrogant gods would try to destroy this whole church that housed the strongest humans, powerful enough to even topple the power of the gods themselves. She was sure that they are arrogant enough to even not consider just how powerful that the God of the Bible actually is. But considering that the church itself is still ongoing and prospering, she could only deduce that this gods has long since abandoned their pride and paranoia itself. That is something that I didn't expect would come out of my thoughts, she thought, truly impressed by the mental evolution of the gods that was so arrogant and paranoid before, with them now being so patient and more trustful of humanity not trying to overthrow them, even though they haven't thought of such thing. But looking back, it truly is the natural evolution of things. Let us test out just how powerful this new wielder is. With that, gathering aura in her hands and feet, and faster than the ordinary eye can see, she then jumped from wall to floor all around her temporary room, with her sending in multiple aura slashes towards the man, who saw this could only create a bubble barrier around himself to not be overwhelmed with such attacks. Ilios, who saw this way of attacking, could only click his tongue in annoyance and disappointment in himself for not seeing this, especially since the vampire is continuously getting faster and faster, to the point that he could no longer see her, with him only having an idea thanks to his own aura and mana sensing to allow him to know where she is currently. And so, when everything in the room itself is destroyed because of her speed, in the next instant, Ilios then concentrated his bubble shield in front of him, creating a golden cross-like barrier to defend anything in front of him, which in the exact same time, Luminous lunged her entire body to the shield itself, with her concentrating her entire aura to her fingernails, much like how Bloody Finger was executed. With her speed and her own efficiency and ability to manipulate aura being many times more powerful and refined than most Crusaders even. The barrier that separated the two of them only lasted for a few minutes before breaking apart, but by then, Ilios was able to jump backwards and cover his entire chest with a solid barrier to not allow himself to be pierced by Luminous's nails, while also using her power to send him back a couple of meters away to create some distance between the two of them. Gaining said distance, Ilios firmly planted himself to the floor itself and then concentrated his focus and might into a single attack, an attack that he usually relies on when he wants to end fights quickly and efficiently. And so, before Luminous could launch another attack, or could think of moving away, Ilios then put both of his palms together and then a black ball of energy appeared right before his palm itself. God's Iron Mace. With the name of the art itself being called upon, a giant sword then shot out of the black ball and lunged itself right into Luminous with speeds that far surpassed the earlier flying sword itself. Because of her own body being already launching off from the ground and into towards the tip of the blade itself, and add in the speed of the giant sword, Luminous quickly covered her palms as well, and then collapsing both of her palms to the wide side of the sword itself, catching it and stopping it from penetrating her skull. But of course, because of the speed and power of said lunge, and with her sealed state, she was still affected by the force of the attack itself, causing her to be launched through the walls of the building, with the sword still moving towards her with immense force. But before her entire body would be forced to smash into the 10th wall, Luminous strengthened her right palm before diverting the entire sword itself and then returning it to the creating while also adding her own power to it, making it even faster and stronger than before, which resulted in said blade to launch itself and then pierce the walls and the barrier that surrounds the place and then escaping from the faction home itself. Ilios, who dodged his own returned attack, quickly activated his holy mail armor and then launched several more blades towards Luminous, but because of their own mass-produced state, they were slower than the first ones that was fired, with Luminous now being able to easily deflect them to either to the walls or to Ilios directly. But of course, these swords are different. Stab. A sword that was deflected struck against left arm, not piercing it, but still, drawing some droplet of blood, right then and there. The swords that was deflected all then turned around to stab her once more. Tisk. With a click of her tongue and a covering of her right hand, she then slashed all around her to destroy the swords that was all around her, which revealed Helios himself with his right arm ready to stab her. Ho, quite expected of you, Queen of Nightmares. With that, he then thrust his right arm towards her, who only moved to the left to dodge the attack, and then to the right when Helios quickly changed into an elbow attacked. Luminous then gathered her aura in her fist before punching Helios square in the stomach, which he was able to negate by grabbing her hand and stealing his entire body itself, making his entire body be moved thanks to her fist. Thanks for the arm. Stab 10 *. Suddenly 10 blades sprouted out of her entire body itself, causing her to release her magical energy inside of her body, causing said blades to be instantly be destroyed, with her then grabbing hold of Helios' arm. Thanks for the arm. With that, she then pulled him to the ground itself, with her left fist closing behind him before landing squarely to his face, resulting with the creation of a giant crater with it being fashioned with a spider web like cracks all over it. Yeah, thanks. Stabs X 20 * Another 20 blades sprouted inside of her body, causing her to flinch slightly, but it was enough for Helios pull one on her, with him kicking her away and then backflipping into his feet before pressing his palms together. God's iron mace. With that, a giant sword was lunged towards her, causing Luminous to just give in to her body's gravity, while also creating mini explosions to her back to accelerate her fall towards the ground itself, allowing her to dodge the attack itself. Releasing another burst of mana inside of her, she was able to easily deal with the blades spreading around her body, before instantly standing up via her toes, allowing her to dodge a kick from Helios, with her retaliating with her punches and jabs which Helios only ever diverted or blocked outright, and each time that their hands touch, a blade sprouted out of Luminous's body. With that, she then sent a kick towards him, sending him flying, with a blade sprouting from her leg, with Helios then creating over a dozen blades before sending them all flying towards Luminosu, with speeds that surpassed the usual barrage of swords heading her way. To this, Luminous just clicked her tongue at, before a white orb filled with aura was created in her palm, aura cannon. With that, it then burst into multiple tiny orbs that is the size of a small pebble, before firing towards the blades itself with such force that it then diverted its direction and went straight towards the ground, with some even being destroyed as well. And when the blades tried to go about and have a go with Luminous once more, the pebble-size orbs didn't vanish, with them just circling around her to protect her from the swords that was flying towards her. With that, she then sent multiple orbs as well towards Helios, who upon seeing that only waved his hand towards the orbs before all of them were all cut down, which resulted in Luminous quickly extending her hand to create a barrier around herself, which resulted in 5 lines to appear all around her, with the only land not affected being the ground she is directly on, and the walls that surround them. Luminous, seeing the lines, couldn't help but compare them to sword slashes itself, and when Helios slashed once more, Luminous concentrated her look towards his hand before rearranging her barrier in the last second, causing the entire crater itself to deepen and widen. HMPH. It seems that you're learning how to use your power even more now. To be honest, I didn't think you have it in you to be able to figure out your power to this extent. Luminous dismissively said to the man, despite her words being the opposite, since after all, she isn't impressed by the man. Sure, he is strong, but that is only ranking through humans, despite him doing his best to overcome his inherent weakness of the sacred gear itself, with his creation being fragile and the immense strain that it grants to the wielder, with his own methods. But still, if this was the best thing that he could do, she could honestly say that he is particularly powerful against demonic entities. But what about other races like angels or gods? By fighting them, he wouldn't have the racial advantage of having holy weapons against demonic entities. Since after all, by that point, he would be in a disadvantage, with angels being quite resistant to holy energy, with gods having quite the ability to manipulate divine energy itself. By that fight, it would be over for Helios if he were to fight them as he fights now. It's because of that, she could only rank him quite low in this Crusader tier of exorcist, since after all, unlike him, the only ones that she could compare him to was those 2 beautiful women. The first one that she fought is relatively weaker than her at her full power, but she was still immense skilled in the manipulation of energy and the way of the sword itself to the point of surpassing her own. She was sure that if in her current stage she would fight that woman, she would be instantly be killed without resistance at all. As for the other one, she doesn't even need to say anything. If she was able to instantly defeat her despite being in her best, she wouldn't even be challenged to her at her current sealed state. It would be like eating a OIECE of candy. It was that easy. In fact, she wouldn't consider it as a fly, since after all, at least a fly can be annoying to kill. But this guy in front of her, he was going all out in just trying to be in the same league as her current weakened self. Of course, she is still very much more powerful than the majority of the supernatural world itself despite her sealed state, but still, for him to be struggling this much despite being in the same rank as the woman that she fought first pisses herself more and more, since after all, in her view, this man doesn't deserve his rank of Crusader if he is this much of a trash. I will be doing a favor for the church by eliminating you here and now. With that, an explosion happened in the crater, deepening it even further. Not too far away from the battle, the three saints of the church, Seal Tempest, Alexander Anderson and Byleth Dulac, currently witnessing the battle. Question. Why are we not going about and stopping the fight? Ilios is powerful, but he is nowhere near the level of power that Luminous Valentine has right now. Byleth questioned her master, who hearing this, could only look directly at Ilios' soul. My question as well, Lord Seal, as smart as you are, you must know just how dangerous a true ancestor is. Sealed or not, they are still a force to be reckoned with. Alexander voiced his doubts as well, with his own worry coming from his own experience as well from fighting the Vampire King class Dracula, which is a monster that to this day is still generally feared by everyone, god or vampire, simply because his reign of terror was so long and monumental. That lived in his era and has witnessed the countless atrocities that he has committed. If it wasn't just for the combined force of multiple factions working together, and some gods as well did it took to finally take him down, but even then, there are still others that believe that he is still alive, not coming to believe of his own death due to his own reputation and power. Something that Seal confirmed to be true, but hasn't said anything to anyone, not seeing the benefits of it all, especially since he could make use of said true ancestor to his own advantage in this war as well. With that, Seal then expanded the space of the battlefield once more, to allow the two of them more space, while also cutting off other possible third parties that might misunderstand what is going on inside of the inner palace of Vatican City itself. Right now, it is unknown to most. Ilios has by far one of the best talents in the world. But right now, he is being held back by his anger towards the vampire race for killing his sister and future brother-in-law, making him one of the many that joined for the simple fact of anger. Seal wasn't really disappointed with the emotion itself, since after all, despite not spending that much time with Gabriel after his journey started, he does very much care a whole lot for her, with her being the person he cared about the most in this world. If she were to die in the hands of an enemy, he would go so far as to abandon everything and kill everything on sight, while also destroying everything that is getting in his way for his own revenge against the perpetrator of such incident. God's Blades, an extremely powerful, but extremely limited ability itself, is one of the strongest sacred gears right now gathered in the church itself, with it having the ability to create extremely sharp holy and divine swords itself. That is the ability of it, and normally it would end there. But something occurred within Ilios. His God's Blades was different, so different that it can be classified as an entirely new sacred gear itself, with it being capable of being classified in the Longinus class category if used and matured properly. That was his intention. One of the many things that he has done over his tenure as Pope, he has been sending out orders and laws that would encourage sacred gear users to go and live within the protection of the church itself, with him guaranteeing absolute protection over them, with exchange of absolute cooperation as well within the church, not just in military power, but economically as well. Because of this, many sacred gear users has taken up the offer to stay within the protection of the church itself, since after all, despite the need to do military and economic service for protection, it is still vastly more superior to their prior conditions, especially those that don't have a faction to work under or in an important, powerful house as well. Because of this, the relatively weak sacred gear users are those that have a powerful sacred gear but don't have anyone protecting them from a world that actively hunts them down because of their power and makes them their slaves, all rallied under the banner of the church and heaven pretty easily as a result. Of course, that wasn't all as well. Fully knowing that there are possibly sacred gear users that don't know of their special abilities, Seal 2 also created several teams of holy knights and exorcists to go around the entire world to acquire said sacred gear users, via several methods, if they are interested in the supernatural world or are homeless because of circumstances. the Holy Knights are instructed to extend an invitation to said users. If said users just wants to be left alone and not bother with the supernatural, then the Holy Knights would safely take away their sacred gear. Of course, they would be paying the former users of said gear for the gear itself, to allow them to live quite the relatively easy lives as well. Of course, encountering a Longinus class sacred gear is also a possibly and one of the main goals of the missions itself, and if one were to encounter a possibly Longinus class sacred gear wielder, there to contact HQ, so that a saint would go and negotiate with said potential wielder. If the individual is a Longinus class wielder, the church will attempt to recruit them, similar to other sacred gear wielders. If they decline to join the church, a Holy Knight will be assigned to train them, fostering a positive outlook on the church in hopes of gaining a potential ally. Should they refuse to part with their gear, the church will offer a handsome sum to safely acquire it from the wielder. And right now, despite the numerous missions that they have, there are currently 2 Longinus class sacred gear that the church has obtained, and quite a few hundred ordinary sacred gears as well joining their camp, either by helping the military via becoming exorcist, sisters of battle, or in the economic side, via construction or production of goods and resources. But out of every one of them, the one that caught the eye of Seal was none other than the Godblade's user, Elios Fernandez. Something that caught the attention of the 2 saints as well, since after all, to acquire the eye of Seal must mean that he has something special going on with him, but as they continue to watch over him, the more and more they felt like said eye is misplaced. Sure, Elios is strong for a human his age, but his power is nothing special at all, with him being one of the middle tiers of the Crusaders right now, something that, on paper makes him quite powerful, but in actually not so compared to the other sacred gear users that joined them over the years. With them very much surpassing his power and skill, with him being seen as the weakest of the current lineup of sacred gear users that has joined in his generation, Seal, who was watching closely, then felt a change. The seed was now finally starting to sprout. It has began. The evolution of Crusader Elios Fernandez has started.